Hello and welcome to another episode of Wiggy Reviews. Halloween may be over, but I still have one more horror story to get through. So let's jump right into it with Stephen King's It. So Stephen King's It. What is it about? Well, if I break it down into the most simplest of plots, it is about a monster that is haunting the city of Derry, Maine, and is killing children, and these 6 kids who are friends have to stop it, and they think they stop it, but then 25 years or so later, it comes back, and they have to come back as adults and fight it again. Basic. So, to go into a little more detail, I guess I should just kind of mention that the reason the story is called It is because the monster doesn't have a name, obviously, but the monster can take on many forms. Its most popular form that the children keep finding him, seeing him as, the form that the children keep seeing it as is a killer clown, hence the creepy clown on the cover. And the six children who kind of come together and realize something is wrong in their town are Bill, Ben, Beverly, Mike, Richie, Stan, and Eddie. So 7 kids, and they lovingly call themselves the Losers Clubs because they're kind of outcasts, but they are friends with grow a very strong bond with each other, so they lovingly call themselves the Losers Club. And each of them come into contact with the evil clown, It, at some point, and then they all start to realize that they've all encountered this same clown, and they're like, well, this is weird, and then they start realizing that children are being murdered, and people around the town are acting strange about it, and they start to realize that this is something that Derry has been dealing with for, well, years. Not like every year, because it seems to only come out every 25 years or so, and then it feeds, and then it goes to sleep. In this story, it takes place during 2 time periods. It takes place when the Losers Club were children, in the year 1957 and 1958. And then it also takes place after they've grown up and moved on, have gone out and become successful outside of Derry, in 1985. So, how did they know to come back? Well, one of them stayed behind in Derry, because they were afraid, what if we didn't kill it? We have to know, if it's not dead, we have to come back and take care of it. It's our responsibility. I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but there's just so much information in this story. As you can see, it's a really thick book. But yeah, so I'll just go into the characters, because really the heart of the story are the characters, and, really the heart of the story is how scary it is. But the main focus of the story are these seven people. And I'll try to go through them as quickly as possible. I'll start with their kid selves and their adult selves. So Bill was kind of the leader of the Losers Club. He lost a brother. It killed his brother one rainy day, and he never got over that because his arm was ripped clean off, and they were like, oh, it was an accident. He was like, how could it have been an accident? His arm was clearly pulled off. So he starts to see weird things going on, like he goes into his brother's room and one of the pictures starts moving, and he never does believe that it was just an accident. He knows something or someone or something killed his brother, Georgie. His name was Georgie, the brother. So Bill, as a child, gains the leadership role, kind of because he has the strongest vengeance against it, since it actually killed his little brother. And then when he grows up, he becomes a successful writer. Another Stephen King thing. We have Maine and we have a writer. A successful writer and he's gotten married. He's married to an actress, and when we see him as an adult, he's actually working on a movie based on one of his books, and his wife is actually starring in it. And he has to up and leave the movie behind, leave his wife behind. He tells her, don't follow me, stay here. And he runs back to Derry when he gets the phone call that it may be back. Another interesting thing about Bill is that as a child, he had a horrible stuttering problem, that he went through, vocal speech therapy, and he was able to overcome it as an adult. So, yay! So that's Bill. Bill, the fearless leader and writer. Next we'll go to Ben. Ben, who as a child was the fat one. And he was bullied for being fat and all that. And he came to Derry with his mother. I can't remember. I know, but I just can't remember whether his father died or his father left his mother. Anyway, so he and his mother move in with his aunt and her family. And he is very romantic. He likes poetry. He likes reading. He writes his own poetry at times. And he gets bullied by one of our other semi-main characters. One of our outside characters has a big part in it, Henry Bowers, and I'll get to him. But Henry Bowers bullies him because he's fat. He even goes so far as to scar his flesh by starting to carve his name into his belly because, children bullies are like that, I guess. At least in the 50s they were. Anyways, so Ben gets with the Losers Club. They immediately take him in, and as an adult, when he leaves Derry, he becomes a well-known architect, and he gets an award for his designs, and he's not married. He has flings with women, but he's not married. His true love was in Derry. Yeah. I believe his father did die. I'm going back to that. He sees the clown for the first time when it I'm gonna get this wrong. There's so many instances where the clown pops up. But he sees the clown, it pretends to be his dead father, and then gives him a scare. But yeah. Let's go on to our next character, who has a tie-in to Ben, because she's the only girl in the group, but Ben immediately fell in love with her and wrote poetry for her, and blah, 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 blah. And that is Beverly Bev. And as a child, like I said, she was the only girl. She was a girl. That was kind of her role. She was the girl. That wasn't her only role, but she was the only girl of the Losers Club. Her father was very abusive to her. But I'm going to say it like this. He was very overprotective of her because she lost her mother. Her father was very overprotective of her, didn't like boys talking to her, didn't like her sneaking out and being with boys alone. And he just happened to be the janitor at the school, so she got bullied for that. Like, you're so poor, your father has to clean up the school. Blah, blah, blah. And she actually had a crush on Bill. She had a crush on Bill, Ben had a crush on her. Aww, youth. When she grew up, she became I believe, a fashion editor in a big magazine. And when we see her as an adult, she's dating a gentleman just like her daddy. Very abusive, doesn't like her, kind of going off on her own, doing her own things. And she has to basically fight to leave him to go back to Derry when she gets the phone call. So let's go on to our next character. Our next character I'm going to talk about is Richie. Richie was the class clown. He just constantly made jokes. He would do funny voices. He was also a little bit of the voice of reason at times. Like, he kind of was like, why are we doing this? This is stupid. We're going to get killed. No, he says that a lot. But he sees the clown as a werewolf. after they went to see a horror film, The Wolfman, and the clown approaches him as a werewolf and scares him, and he runs away, and of course he's like, I saw a werewolf, and nobody believes him because he's the class clown, and yeah, so, oh, Richie. He is also known as Beep Beep Richie, because he likes to make really lewd jokes at times, and when people want him to be serious, they'll go, Beep Beep Richie, to like say, shut the hell up, Richie, you know, so, yeah, and then when he's an adult, obviously he goes and he becomes a big comedian, he becomes a stand-up comic, he's getting the opportunity to possibly do films, and when he gets the call, he, like, has a kind of an internal struggle, like, I made this promise, I have to go back, but, I'm becoming so successful, and he, like, he fights it, but he's, like, he knows he has to go back, and he gets into a fight about it with his agent and friend, but he does eventually make it back, and, yeah, Beep Beep Richie. Next is Mike, who is actually the one that stayed behind. He stayed behind in Derry, and then once it began to look like it came back, he's the one who had to call everybody and be like, it's come back, remember your promise, it's come back. And Mike, like I said, he stayed in Derry, and he was the black kid. He was the black boy. He's black. The black man now, but he was the black boy in 57, 58, so of course he was bullied, and of course he was treated poorly, especially by our bully, Henry Bowers, but that is, I'll get to that too a little more in detail, but to glance over it really quickly, just in retrospect, in respect to Mike, it's because Mike's father actually cost Henry Bowers' father his job, and I'll get into a little more detail about that later, but, so Mike he was a smart boy. When he was in school, he immediately clung to the Losers Club because they understood his outcastness, and he witnesses the clown. He witnesses the clown, I think, the most before he gets with the Loser Club. He sees the clown around, and he knows something's off about him, but nothing ever comes of it at first. But then when he's exploring an old factory that burned to the ground, a giant bird attacks him, and that's when he starts to realize that the bird and the clown are linked. And when he meets with the Loser Club, he's kind of the one that joins everyone's experiences with it, and they start to realize something's wrong in Derry, and people know it, the adults know it, something's wrong in Derry. And then as a man, like I said, Mike stayed behind in Derry. He is the one who said, I'm going to look out, just make sure it doesn't come back. He's the librarian, he takes over the library, so he's kind of central in the community, and yeah, he's kind of the watcher, the keeper of Derry while everyone else moved out. Then we get to to Eddie, who, I guess really he was the nerd geek, stereotypical one. He had asthma, he had asthma, he had an overprotective mother, he wasn't, like, that didn't want him really to hang out with his friends. She was just like, oh, Eddie, he's sick, he can't go out, he's sick. So he was always led to believe that he was sick, that he couldn't do things, and he experiences the clown when he has to go take the showers after gym class. He ends up being alone because his mother was like, I don't want you showering with those other boys, Eddie, because you're precious cargo. And of course the coach is like, you gotta shower. You don't want to smell awful. So he goes in, the clown freaks him out in the showers, corners him there, but doesn't kill him, just scares him, gives him a good scare. And when he grows up, he takes over this business of, if I remember, limousine drivers? Yeah, he like starts a company of limousine drivers, and like he's very successful. He still lives with his mother as an adult, doesn't have a wife or girlfriend or anything, still living with mom, still taking the medicine, still has the asthma and all that. Yeah, so he's just kind of I guess he's more considered the little brother of everyone. Like, everyone kind of feels like they have to protect him, so he's the little brother of everyone. Even when they get back together as an adult, they're like, oh, he's our little brother, and head noogie and all that. And then, oh, Eddie. So then we get to our final of the Losers Club, Stan. Stan, as a boy, well, first off, Stan was he's Jewish, so he was very into his religion, very much, and he's very, like, things have to be this way, very organized, very da-da-da-da. He was a Boy Scout, so he knew he didn't like doing things that got any of them in trouble. He was very follow the rules. And he kind of is the one that denies it the longest, that something is wrong, that it exists. He's like, nope, it's not possible. It's scientifically and logically, it can't exist. That's not, blah, blah, blah. All the while hiding the fact that he himself has witnessed, has been, I'll call them attacks. He's been attacked by the clown. But he's the last one to finally be like, yes, something is wrong. Even when they decide to do something about it, he's still kind of like, we shouldn't be doing this. We should tell adults, and adults should do it. And then as an adult, I can't remember what he does, but he became very successful. He got married. They haven't been able to have a child yet, but he's like just happy. He's a happy adult. And his wife, and he has like this perfect routine that they do every night. They eat dinner, they watch TV, and then they go and they try to make a baby every night. It's like that's like and everything's ordered. There's an order to everything. Everything's organized. Everything is where it should be. Everything in its place for him. And then he gets the call from Mike, and the memories of everything, the pressure of it, become too much for him. But I'm not going to get into that. So then I'll just talk about one other character, really, the only other, I guess, important character besides it, and that is Henry Bowers. Henry Bowers is your typical bully, like bully. He's the typical Stephen King bully, hates everyone, beats up on everyone, threatens to kill these kids. Like, you have to remember, they're also all kids. I mean, Henry is the oldest because he's been held back, but he, like, threatens to kill all of them at some point, and he almost follows through on multiple occasions. And to go into his backstory, like I said a little earlier, his father lost his job because of Mike's father, because Henry's father was being a complete bigot at Mike's father, and Mike's father complained, had to defend himself about it, and Henry Bowers' father lost his job. So he's always kind of blamed Mike's family for that. And so, of course, Henry didn't fall far from the apple tree, and he is just as bigoted, just as hateful, and of course it doesn't help that his father beats him with, like, anything he can grab. He beats poor Henry, so of course he's grown up to be kind of a punk and a bigot. And of course Henry is, due to events in the story, is blamed for the murders of the children when everybody's a kid. So when he's an adult, he's in an insane asylum. Yeah, so then let's get into the monster really quick. So the monster is just called It. They just refer to it as the clown because that's the form it takes most of the time. And the reason it does that is because children, like, see a clown. Let me rephrase. Not nowadays children who are terrified of clowns, but children would, like, see a clown. It would be something they trusted. They'd be something funny. They would be, guard down, and they would approach, and then it would kill them, or attack them, or whatever it wanted to do, or terrorize them. And it can take the form of your greatest fear. It can take the form of other people. It can take the form of... It can change its form. It can control things. Like, it can make pictures move. It can reach out of pictures. It can make things grab you. Its sole purpose is to terrify you. And the reason it does that is because if it terrifies you, it makes you taste better. Woo! The fear is like a special seasoning. Yeah, so those are the characters. That's the monster. I just want to really get to the comparisons of the book and the movie miniseries here. So let's just get right into the comparison. So, of course, they made a TV miniseries about it. It was very long. It was a two-parter, so about an hour each per part, and it was on TV. It wasn't released in theaters. And even if you haven't read the book or seen it, you probably know about it just because Tim Curry played the killer clown. And you probably have seen jokes about it all over the place. Yeah, and he... So, before I get into more details, I just want to do the comparisons in a brief sense. They had, of course, for time restraint and time reasons, they had to cut a lot out. And they had to condense a lot of the information that came in and tweak it a bit just so it would run more smoothly, so they could have, you know, film stuff. So was a lot of the quality sacrificed? I don't think so. I think it still held up to the true essence of the story. Something's terrorizing this small town in Maine. People know about it, but they don't really talk about it. It's just kind of something that they know is there, but they don't really know what it is, but they don't know how to stop it. And a group of friends take it on. They think they've won, but just to be sure, they make a promise that if it comes back, they'll come back and they'll finish the job. And I think the movie touches those important basics pretty well. The casting is pretty good. I would say, like, the kids were perfect. I had no problems with any of the children actors. Like, they were very, very good children actors. Fun fact, Seth Green is in this. He plays a young Richie. So Seth Green is in here. So yeah, if you want to see a young Seth Green, he's in there. Of course, I mentioned Tim Curry as the killer clown. Again, perfect casting. He's terrifying. He has the terrifying voice down pat. Then the adults, I would say, actually the adult actors were, I don't say this a lot, but the adult actors were actually kind of weaker than the children actors. Like, I think they did a brilliant job casting the kids, but then some of the adults were just kind of very stiff, very lackluster. Richie was great, Ben was great, all the other ones were okay, but Richie and Ben were, I think, the best cast out of the adults of the Losers Club. I don't want to get into too much because I think the experience of watching it is something different than the experience of reading the book. I will say the book does drive the fear a little better, and that's just because it can't be as dated as a film can. Like, it wouldn't matter what year it was written in the book, like, because it just kind of touches on that universal acceptance of what scares us, and it does it very well. In the miniseries, I can understand how some people, when they watch it, are like, this isn't scary, this is actually really, this is cheesy, and it's like, yeah, but, I mean, we have to take into consideration when it was made. It was made in, I think, late 80s, early 90s, maybe even just right in the middle there, 1990, and it was a TV miniseries. Back in that time, they weren't as high quality as nowadays that you can get, but it is highly dated. It is. Like, you watch it and you're like, yeah, this is from back then. And I mean, like, some of the special effects didn't hold up very well. But, and they also say, like, how are people scared of of Tim Curry as a clown? He's not that scary. And it's like, again, you have to take into consideration of, I mean, you have to take into consideration of also that this was more of a time when, well, I'll take it a step further. Like, clowns didn't originally start being scary until, I think, even, like, the late 80s, early 90s. So Stephen King was kind of starting to help with that bandwagon getting more popular. Because I'm one of those people, I don't find clowns terrifying, personally. I don't think they're scary. I even know a few people who are clowns. But it's like, because, like, even the children in the film aren't scared of the clown. The reason they're scared of it is because they know it's not a real clown. They know it's something evil. It's an unnerving feeling. It's the feeling of unnervingness that Mike mentions in the book. He says, I was at a parade. I was marching in the parade. I was playing my trombone, and I saw this clown, and he was handing out balloons to children. And the children were very excited to see a clown handing it out. But when I was looking at him, there was just something odd about him, like he wasn't supposed to be there. And we went a few blocks down, and there he was again. He was there handing balloons out to children again, but this time these children, the younger children, like toddlers, were terrified of him. They wouldn't go near him. And it's the fact that it's just the fact that this thing that you get so used to being relating to something happy and joyful, having this strange feeling of, he's not supposed to be here. There's something wrong. But you don't know what it is. That's what's scary. It's not even the fact that he's like I said, the clown thing, he could have picked anything for it to have taken the form of. But he chose a clown because that's something that children trusted in those days. And then to talk about the argument of, because there's a lot of balloons that appear in the miniseries, a lot of people are like, oh no, balloons, how scary. But it's, again, it's that fact of, it's not supposed to be there. It's the fact that he brings those balloons because he says, this could have been me. Next time, this could be me hiding behind you, ready to get you. I can be anywhere. I can sneak up on you and you won't even hear me coming. That is why he keeps putting the balloons everywhere. Because if you ever notice watching it, the balloons are right there. There's a point where Mike wakes up. He turns, there's a balloon right here, and he sees footprints that lead right up to him. It came, it was that close to him, but it didn't kill him because it's biding its time. So it's, the balloons are only there to show that it mocking them, making fun of them, saying like, you're here to fight me, but I can get at you anytime I want. You won't even know when I'm there. So it's that. So yes, in retrospect, watching it, you're like, it's a balloon. What's scary about that? But you have to remember why it's scary. It's scary because he can get you, and you won't even hear him. And then that leads me to my point. Then why doesn't he just get you, right? And it's like, well, like I said a little before, he likes to build up the fear in you because the fear makes you taste good. So, yes, it's a little silly that he has to scare you and that gives you time to fight back. But most of the time people don't fight back because it's fear and fear freezes you and all that. The only reason these kids were able to fight back is because they came together and they had this bond that kind of protected them a little bit because they could be together, they could help each other, they could be there and be like, it's not real, don't worry about it, and all that. So, yeah, I know it's been a little bit of a rambling episode, so I'm just going to go ahead and end it now before I just keep going on and on and on. So let me do my scoring. And like I said before, this is one of my favorite Stephen King stories. I think absolutely a high contender for my number one favorite story. The book is very thick, very hard to get through for people who aren't used to Stephen King writing. But I have to give the book a 10 out of 10 for me, because I think the pacing is done well, the transitions between the past and the present, or well, I guess I should say, the transition between the kids to their adults is, like, wonderfully done. Like, a chapter ends and it goes right into the memory, and, like, it leads right into the memory, and I think it's done very well. The fears, the uneasiness that comes with it, you can kind of feel it. It makes you really feel the horror that these people are going through, the unease of not knowing where it will strike or where it is hiding or how it is going to get you, is just, it builds and builds and builds in a way that only classic horror can do, I think. For the miniseries, like I said, the children acting was amazing. Who they got to act as the characters as children, I think, was spot on. They knew what they were doing. They knew that really the essence of the story was them as the kids, because that's where you get the most fear from. When they're adults, it's not as terrifying, but when they're kids, that is where the fear comes in. So if they couldn't get really good kid actors to do those parts, I think it would have completely fallen through. But I think those kids held this entire mini-series. Like I said, a couple of the adult actors were good. Oh, Mike was good. I always forget. Mike, Ben, and Richie were the best of the adult actors, in my opinion. The story did kind of lose some of its terror when they had to condense it down. You see everybody else's first interactions with the clown by themselves. You don't get to see Mike's, and I guess I thought that would be silly. Even though that's a whole other thing, but another day. So for the mini-series, because those kid actors held basically the whole story, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, just because it was wonderful to see some really good kid actors doing wonderful acting. So an 8 out of 10 for the mini-series of It, and of course Tim Curry is just hilarious. Terrifying and hilarious. So 8 out of 10 for It, the mini-series, a 10 out of 10 for the book. And now we are out of Halloween. We are approaching the next holidays. So we're gonna get right back to just some plain books, and maybe I'll do something special for the holidays. I don't know. we'll see what I feel like. So that was It by Stephen King. Check it out if you're interested, especially if you've only seen the miniseries. At least give the book a read and make your own choices about whether or not balloons can be scary. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!